Next to me, I have Selena Huapilla. She's a recent grad from Michigan State University. I want to start talking about how was your journey first? How did Michigan State University come about? What led you there?
Yeah, so I guess for starters, hola everyone. I'm Selena Huapilla Perez. The journey to Michigan State, I think it was senior year, so I graduated with Anita. So we class 2014. But I think when I was, my group of friends was always talking about what was next, transcripts, the ACT and everything like that, and I was kind of I couldn't be part of those conversations because I remember that I wasn't really doing all those things. I wasn't preparing myself for college, and I think I was in Dr. Bossison's class or something like that, and they made an announcement over the intercom that a recruiter from Michigan State was at the high school, that if any interested seniors could attend, and you were allowed to miss class for that. And I had never even thought of where the state of Michigan was. Wasn't even thinking about anything outside of Florida. So when I heard that, I was kind of I want to skip class. So so I went to the presentation, and I remember that first of all I was there's a Latino man. The recruiter is a Latino man. And his name is Elias Lopez. He still works for the College Assistant Migrant Program at MSU. And I remember when he was talking about his story and how he came about to be at MSU, what he was able to accomplish because of MSU. I was oh my God, I just resonated so well because he was also a migrant farm worker, had little to no resources in navigating academia, little support from family, things like that. So I just resonated so well with his story, and I was if he could do it, I can do it too. Exactly. And in that moment, I remember that day I called my mom and I was hey, I'm staying after school, I have to do some stuff at the migrant center. And so I stayed at the migrant center, and I was somebody help me, I need to apply to this school. And so I asked questions where do I get transcripts, how, what even should I put on my resume, things like that. I started asking the serious questions. It just kind of all came very fast because I remember that prior to that I had never really given much attention to those types of things. So I, started asking a lot of questions. I applied. I think not specifically that day, but I got my application started. Thankfully the Migrant Center staff was there to help me because a lot of the questions I was I don't even know what these things mean or anything like that. So I came to think about MSU because of the recruiter from MSU, and he talked about the College Assistant Migrant Program, so CAMP, how they were able to support, in many ways, but specifically financially support students that were also from migrant families navigate academia. So again, I was I need to go there, and then I applied to go there, but I never once gave thought to how far it was actually away from home. So I applied, and then I think a month or two maybe went by, and then I actually heard back from them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I had applied. In the meantime, though, I had applied to other schools, all in Florida, and so I got accepted to a few of them. But I remember none of them really when I got those letters or those emails, I wasn't oh my God, I'm going there, anything like that. But when I got Michigan State, I remember I never checked the mail. My mom always checks it. So on that day, she was oh, go check the mail. So I checked the mail, and yeah, it was my letter. It was a big envelope, and it said Michigan State Office of Admissions. And I was oh my God, I think this is it. So I hid it in my backpack because I had already told my parents oh, Michigan State, somebody came, and they were both oh, well, that's cool, but you're not going there. That's too far for you. So I remember that I couldn't, that wasn't a conversation that I was going to have with my parents anytime soon. So I got the letter, and I remember I left everything, and my mom was oh, ayúdame a hacer las tortillas, and I was oh, I have to go to my room real quick. So I went to my room, and I opened the envelope, and it was the first thing I see is a big green poster that says, congratulations, you're a Spartan. And I was oh my God, that was the moment, that was what I was waiting for. And so I didn't tell my parents about it for 3 days, and then I finally showed them my letter. But again, they were that's not, no, there's schools in Florida. But then I some time went by. I didn't pay attention to the letter. So I was on my way to church because I used to be an altar server. So I went to church with my parents, and I remember that on the way, like right before I entered the church, I had a phone call from East Lansing, Michigan, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? I'm gonna answer it. So I answered it, and it was Elias Lopez, and they're a recruiter, and he was just calling me to make sure that if I was going to Michigan State or not, if they should give my spot away to somebody else, or if they should reserve it for me. And in that moment, like, I didn't even think twice. I was like, yes, I'm going. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna get there. I haven't told my parents. I don't know anything, but I'm going. So I remember the entire time at church, I was just like praying to God. I was like, God, please, like, I'm gonna tell my parents after this, but please, like, que no me chinguen, you know, like, I was just so scared, you know, that like first generation, like those things, those little things. So after church, my dad was like, oh, who called you? And I was like, oh, like somebody from Michigan State, they just want to know if I'm going. And my dad was like, so what did you say? And I was like, I'm going, you know, like there's no way out now. Like I said, yes, I'm going, and they're reserving my spot. And I remember the entire car ride home, it was very quiet. My dad was trying to make conversation, but my mom was very silent. So I think it's always been harder on my mom than it has been on my dad, because my dad has been a little more supportive of, like, as long as you go into higher education, I'm fine with it. But my mom has always kind of been like, yes, I want you to go, like, to college, but somewhere close to home. So then I got home and I told the rest of my family, my siblings, and everybody was in tears. So, but yeah, after then it just kind of got, you know, like everything just fell into place.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't even remember any, like, it's been so long, but it's just, I think that everything happens for a reason, and I don't know, I love the fact that I made that decision. And it was a scary decision at the time. I was 18 and I made the decision to, like, move 5 states away from home. But now looking back, I'm like, there's like no other place that I would have, or, you know, thought of myself being anywhere than there. So
it's great. Now, like, I know, like, we all see this, like, after, like, the hard work, you know, we see all the success going on and stuff. But, like, tell me about those nights, those days when you felt like giving up, and like, what got you through that, and like, you remember, like, what was one moment exactly where you're like, I can't give up now?
Yeah, I think it was very hard to be away from home, to be first generation, to be a student of color at a predominantly white institution. There were, you know, like, I went from literally, like, living in Florida to, like, Michigan is shaped like a mitten, if you, like, if you see it up close. But so I went from, like, there was so many reasons why my first semester I was like, I'm gonna go home, like, this isn't for me, actually, you know. I thought wrong, my parents were right. And I think that my first semester, it was after I had just come back from a study abroad. So the program that I was part of, it was mandatory for us to go on a study abroad. And I remember it was spring break, so I remember I was like, oh, I'm gonna get to go home for spring break. Like, at least that will, like, give me ganas to come back and, like, really get to work again. But that spring break I spent it abroad in Mexico, and that was an amazing experience. But again, I was just, like, so homesick, and I was like, I'd rather be home. So when I came back from that one, I realized, like, you know what, like, this university is cool, but I think I'm gonna go home. And I was just so homesick for a variety of reasons. It was beginning to start winter. I had never experienced a real winter in my life. I felt like an outsider in my classrooms. Like, everybody in my classrooms was white except me. So I was often the only person of color in all my classrooms. So even in my major, which was education at the time, I felt like I was in the wrong spot. I felt like everyone had these ideas of education, and I was the only one that was, like, not on their case. I was often afraid to ask questions because I didn't want to seem dumb, or, like, I didn't know how to phrase certain things. And mind you, like, I was in a classroom with people who have had people they weren't first generation. They weren't, you know, like, having to see what's next, or, like, they had things planned out for them. So I think that that's why often in my classrooms I was like, oh, like, I never left my classrooms feeling like, this is amazing, I love it. And even the clubs and organizations that I wanted to join, I remember that I didn't see people like me in them. Aside from the crew or the Latino student organization on my campus, that was the only one that I saw people of color who looked like me, talked like me, had similar experiences like mine. But beside that, other things that I wanted to branch out into, there weren't people like me. So there was so many reasons. Like my professors weren't people like me, anything like that. So my counselors, my advisors, everything like that. So there was, again, so many things that were like weighing down on me, and I was like, I should just go home. And I think that there was one night where I was like, I got like an email saying that I was like failing one of my courses because I guess I didn't even know how, but there was like an online portion of the class that I wasn't aware of because I didn't buy the access code to it. So it was like a class where you have to attend class and then you have to do like an online part of it. So I guess I missed the memo, so I didn't buy the online version. So I was only going to class, but that wasn't accounting for like everything that my grade should be. So I got the email that was like, hey, like you're failing your class, like talk to your professors or an advisor or something. If not, you're gonna be put on academic probation. And I was like, wait, what? So that's when that night I remember that I was like, okay, this is a sign from God that like I need to go home. Like this, like I'm not smart enough to be here.
Oh my gosh.
So and I remember that like 2 days after that, my friends and I, we were like hungry and the cafe was already closed. So there was a group called Mujer a Mujer, and they're a Latina student group, so they do workshops for undergraduate Latina women. And they were talking about, there was 3 people who run that, and all 3 of them have graduated from MSU. They're Latina, first gen, also faced many struggles, and they were all talking about like their story through MSU. They talked about like being pregnant at MS, or like becoming pregnant at the ages of 16 or 17. They talked about what it was like to like have their parents not talk to them for a whole year because they, because they like left home to go to university so far from home. One of them talked about like what it was like to be on academic probation and the university kicked her out. So like all 3 of them were talking about these very real stories, but still how like they graduated, how they did it, they made it happen. So I remember that night I went for the pizza, but I stayed for their actual stories. Like their stories where I was like, oh my God, like I'm not the only one, and like this is that's where I found my group, so that's where I was like, okay, like this is also a sign that like I should stay here and that I'm gonna stay here. So after then, like le eché ganas, like more ganas than I did. But I remember those were nights where I was very scared, like I'm wasting time, I'm wasting money. I was just afraid of like asking for help because I think that within the Latino community we're like conditioned to think continuously that like asking for help is a sign of weakness, especially in academia. Yeah. So again, I wasn't prepared for like the struggles that were gonna come my way, and I wasn't prepared because I didn't know how to ask for help. When there was many people that were willing to help me, I just didn't know how to ask them for it. So, but I think that aside from that, there was also so many nights, even up to senior year, that I was like, even in terms of like now being close to graduation, applying for jobs. Where I was like, how do I talk to these things about my parents? Or how do I talk to like, like how do I ask other people for advice without seeming like I don't know because I'm a senior now and I still don't know. So different things like that it was very hard to like just kind of navigate all of that as a first gen.
So I guess like what guided you there was like learning the process, having people to help you, and just staying motivated that you wanted to get there.
That trial and error.
Yeah.
Trial and error. But
I think like we learn from our mistakes, and that's like the most precious thing about life, that we don't get knocked out by them.
Yeah.
And like I also want to talk about like I've seen your posts on Instagram, and I've seen like you always are trying new things, but like I think one of the things that stops us from doing or accomplishing your dreams is fear. And like how did you like knock fear down and you're like, okay, I'm going for this, because I think it's really hard for us to like take on adventure knowing that things could go wrong, and like how did you do it? What did you tell yourself?
No, there's a quote that I heavily relate to, and it says, I've been afraid every single moment of my life, but I've never let it stop me from doing a single thing I wanted to do. And I think that has been me like in my entire like academic or higher education career, just because again, since the moment that I even applied to that university to the moment that like I graduated, I was still very afraid, whether it was like internships or fellowships or study abroad or applying for scholarships, that I was like, I'm not too smart enough for this, or things like that I think just every moment I've been afraid, but I'm like, I have to try. You know, it doesn't hurt. And I think that one of the biggest things was like my first semester, there was a scholarship for like Latina women. And I was like, no, I'm not going to apply to it because like I'm not smart enough. I can't even write a good personal statement or anything like that. And I was like, whatever, like I'm going to apply. So I applied for it, and when I got it, that was the first moment that I was like, okay, like I can get the hang of this.
Yeah.
Like I can apply for more things, right? Like I'll get them. Or even if I don't, like that's fine too. And the more things that I was like starting to be able to like branch out to or get or do or see, and that were like turning out to be the way that I wanted them, that's what really helped me like see, okay, like don't be so afraid, like you're capable, like you can do this. So every like accomplishment that I've been able to receive, or every like big thing that I didn't know that I could do that I actually did, was what like the next time that I had to do something even bigger, I was like, okay, like I'm not too scared of this, you know, something like that. That it just like I was doing things that I never imagined myself being able to do, and let alone like without the help of someone prior to me telling me. But I always like to think though that like I think fear is one of the big, or like it's a part of being first generation. You know, like that it's inevitable. Like we are gonna be afraid of the things that are gonna come our way because we've never had exposure to those types of things. So now I'm glad that like I have a little sister who's also like now looking at navigating academia or her next steps, and you know like when she has questions, she asks me. So like I'm glad that like I have been able to do that for her, but I also remember like that's why I was so afraid, because I didn't have anyone to go to. So now my little sister's like, oh, like I'm scared if I don't know how to apply to this, and I'm like, girl, just go for it, because like you know like, and she's reassured by me, but like we didn't have those reassurances going forward. So.
And I think like fear, like you said it, like it became kind of like not easier, but because you knew you could do something that you had already tried, you could do the next thing. And I think fear is like a muscle. You know, once more you exercise it, you know, you can do another thing. To next forward. So like sometimes when the going gets tough, we will ask ourselves like why is this happening to me, right? I think we both have a perspective of life happening for us, right? We don't think that we're victims of life. What are the most valuable lessons you learned from the tough times?
Most valuable lessons. I think one of the biggest ones is asking for help. Again, I didn't really want to seem like I already felt out of place that first semester, that first year. So to ask for help meant even more that I shouldn't be there. So I was very afraid of asking other people for help. I was afraid to tell even my family that like, hey, it's not going so well or anything like that. Or like even telling my friends who were, and I think because we were also quiet and we were also scared to ask for help, that we were all literally going through the same things in different forms. But I think that's one of the things that I've been able to like see now reflecting like on my past years, that I should have asked for more help that first year, that first semester. I got better at it because I obviously got to a point where I was like, oh my God, like I really need somebody to advocate for me. But I think that, you know, like going forward, that's something that I always tell people, like ask for help. Like we've all been there. Like you're not, you know, like, I don't know. It's just, I think that, I don't know, like my classes, whether I was applying for scholarships, whether I was like navigating what it meant to even study abroad. Like I didn't even know that study abroad was a real thing. Like I was just like, I'm going to go to that university and study there, but I didn't know that aside from there, I was going to go somewhere else. So just different things that like, I think the biggest thing that I would tell people is just ask for help. And even now when I talk to students, I'm like, ask for help. Like I don't want, like, just because you are the first in your family, like in your immediate family to graduate from like high school and go to college doesn't mean that you're like yes, you're going to be first generation, but there are people before you that like have also been first gen, and we can serve as that like older sister, older brother type of thing, that like maybe I'm not anything like related to you, but like I will serve as that role for you because I know how hard it was.
And like that's kind of one of the things why I wanted to reach out to you, because I know there's many students in high school right now who like they might think they can do it, but if we create sort of a blueprint
Mm-hmm.
that lets them know that it's possible, the resources are there, then I think they're more willing to take that step, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to set that example for them. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you did it. So
And I remember last year though that like I had heard from Ms. Ramirez in the Migrant Center that there were students that were looking into MSU, but none of them had given a solid yes.
yeah.
And not because I was like trying to recruit anybody for my university, but just because I was like, I want them to know that they can do it.
Yeah.
So I went to the high school and I spoke to it was like around 16 of them, students who were looking at MSU. Not all 16 went, but I think all 16 actually did end up going somewhere into higher education. Maybe not at Michigan. I think it was only like 8 of them that actually chose Michigan State. But aside from them, other ones chose like UF, FAMU, different schools here in Florida. But I was like, as long as I was able to talk to them and let them know that I was there too, trust me, type of thing. And it was very rewarding. I think that we who have been there before can now talk to the younger generation of scholars like, hey,
it's possible.
Yeah,
there's it.
Yeah. So I was glad that was able to happen.
So when you first started going, you're going to be going to Colorado to be a teacher?
No, I'm going to be working with AmeriCorps. So an AmeriCorps program, and it's predominantly like a research, hands-on learning type of thing. So just learning from what Denver Public Schools is doing, since they are the biggest district in Colorado and the fastest growing in the nation. Just seeing what they're doing to address the needs of their schools. And their schools are predominantly low income, speak more than 2 languages, receive free or reduced lunch, come from migrant working families. These different identities that are often underrepresented at the national level in the education field. So just being able to see research on what they're doing across all of their schools and why so many people are choosing their schools, or why their schools are one of the best in the nation. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing. So hopefully for a year, and then I want to return for my master's.
Okay, awesome. But I want to know what led you there. Because we heard the term passion, and to me, I don't think passion is a thing, it's a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You gravitate towards that feeling that gives you that creativity, that excitement.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what led you there.
Yeah.
So how did you find that? What made you explore that field that you were like, okay, I think this is for me?
I've always been passionate about education. So when I went to MSU, I was an education major. But because of the Michigan State College of Education has this requirement from this exam that you have to take. It's like a statewide exam. And I didn't find out about this exam till my junior year. And by junior year, you have to be admitted into the college with the test scores of this exam. So I had never taken the exam. It was already too late to take it. And the exam was costing $160, the exam. So I was like, I'm already late. I don't have the money for that. So I switched majors. But I have always been passionate about education. And my major now allows me to work within the humanities. So across many communities. Not just centered just on education, the different avenues that I can do with education. So I'm glad that I was able to find something else that was able to lead me still toward that. But I think that I've always been passionate about education because I am the product of public education.
Yeah.
I am obviously the daughter of migrant farm workers, immigrants. So those two things combined, those very intersectional identities that I hold, and knowing that and then this past summer I did an internship with the White House Initiative on Education Excellence for Hispanics, and I was able to do a lot of research on Hispanics in the U.S. So that's when I realized the importance of what it means to go into education and what it means to serve underrepresented communities across education. Yeah. So I think that one of the things that led me to Colorado is the fact that they have those communities, they have those pockets of communities, and I have it here at home too. I was thinking so hard about should I go home and serve my immediate community, or should I go somewhere else where I can, learn from them and then come back home and apply those things, or what I hope to do eventually, and far away from now, hopefully after receiving a second degree, whether it's a master's or a PhD, is I would like to work at the U.S. Department of Education.
Yeah.
So
bigger home.
I need to take Betsy DeVos' job. No, but I think that I want to impact policies or implement conversations of change at a national level. So when I think about Colorado, I think about, yes, I want to like learn from them and come back home and apply it here. But I also realize that like it's also in Detroit, and it's also in Texas, and it's also in California. Mm-hmm. So I think about like, yes, I can come back home and help my community here, or I can take those few extra steps and then end up at the national level where I can implement that for more than just my community of Huapilla. Yeah. So I think that that's why I chose Colorado, because my family wanted me to come home. And I thought like, I need to go home and serve Huapilla. Like that's where my heart is. But then I also thought like, as a migrant farm worker, I've seen the different like schools that I've been in and like the different things that I can bridge, like those gaps that we can bridge. So that's why I like ended up eventually in Colorado, because I thought about how that's going to take me where I need to be at the national level. And so I'm excited because I'm going to be working with communities that I'm familiar with. Yeah. Obviously a very different state, a very different, community of people there, but still, let alone with those identities that I hold myself as first gen, have always received free or reduced lunch. I'm Latina, speak more than speak two languages. But again, so I'm excited that like I'm going to be working with a community that I have never met, but I'm familiar with, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now like talking about those communities, I know to us, our parents like have like taught us so much, and they're like, to me, it's like when I go somewhere, it's like I'm kind of representing my parents. Mm-hmm. What has like been the most precious thing, the most valuable thing that you think your parents have instilled in you, and how do you carry that throughout your life?
I think
hard work.
Yeah, hard work. Definitely with the identities that my parents hold as immigrants. They came here at literally like the age that I was. Like at their age, I can't imagine doing anything that they would have done. Yeah. Or like even at my age, they were already more accomplished in so many other ways that like I can't even imagine doing that at the age that I am now. But I think that the biggest thing that they've taught me is just like resilience. And my dad always has this quote that he tells me and my sisters and my brother, that like, no te creas inteligente, sé inteligente. Right, yeah. So he that humbles me, because it reminds me that like, yes, I can do all these things and win all these awards, and like those are cool things, but like that doesn't make me any better than anyone. Okay. So I think that one of the biggest things that comes with that is just like work ethic of like, keep doing better, but not to be better, but to be better for others. Yeah. So I think that that's one of the biggest things that they've like instilled in me, is like the resilience, and just that's why I guess even just like taking that big step to go to MSU, I wasn't really afraid of like, like if I fall, I know that I'm gonna get up, because like I've seen them do it. Exactly. And I've seen them do it like throughout the years, whether it was like not finding work, or like certain things not working out for us, or having to move, or just different things that have happened across like our life. I've just seen them always, like, whether they fell like in however manner that they fell, they always came back up, and they came back up for us. So I thought like, if they could do that for 30 plus years, I can do that for them too.
Yeah, and they make it seem easy. Because, they've like done so much like harder things than we have. Yeah. And I think like they just keep us going, grounded, and like pushing for more.
And I know that like if they fell and they had no one to pick them back up, and like if I fall, I know that they can pick me up. Exactly. So that's why I'm always so sure of that next step, even if I don't know where I'm stepping.
Yeah. For someone who is unsure of what they want to do with going forward, what would you tell them to follow? Money, excitement?
I just think that like, you never know you just never know. Like even now, like I can say that like I'm excited about education, I'm excited about Colorado, but like I'm not gonna know until I get there, So, and I think that when people look at me, they think that I have my things together. Like, I know everything, and the truth, I don't. Sorry to break it to you. No, but I think that my advice for someone who's, like, still trying to navigate the waters, unsure, whether you're in high school, whether you're in middle school, whether you're post-grad, anything like that, I think that you're never going to know until you actually take that step. But I would say is, follow wherever you want, like, follow where you want to go. There's so many people that told me like, oh, like your resume is worthy of this job, like you can go there. Why do you want to do education? They don't pay well, they don't do anything like that. And I've never really seen like, obviously we all want to do better financially, we all want to like climb the ladder, if you will, but I think that like that's not something that like my parents have ever taught me or I've ever seen or I've ever been raised. Like money is not something that drives me. And I think that just, I don't know, I could have been other things. I could have applied for other jobs. I could have gotten other things. But it's a privilege, I think, to be able to serve underserved communities. So, I don't know, like, I would just say, like, do what you want, like, what your heart is telling you. Not for jobs, not what other people are telling you. Because I've had, like, conversations with employers, and they're like, you are great for this, or things like that. But those aren't the types, like, I'm not always seeing myself as an employer. I'm seeing myself as someone who can serve people. And, like, I don't continuously, like, benchmark myself to money. I don't, like, I'm not looking for jobs based on, like, how much money I'm going to make, which is probably a bad thing. But, no, I think that, I don't know, it's just, I follow where I want to go. And my parents, trust me, you know, again, their dreams of, like, one of their children being a graduate of university, they have bigger, you know, like, things in mind for, like, what jobs I can take. And for me to, like, choose something as, like, serving underserved communities is not something that they even had in mind. They were like, why that? Or, like, are you sure about that? So I think that, you know, having your friends or employers or, you know, like, faculty and staff or just friends tell you, like, oh, I think you should do something else because I don't really see you in that. But, you know, there's so many voices that could have told me to do something different. But, again, at the end, I stayed rooted to, like, what I wanted to do.
And I think it's important to know that, you know, we each have our own definition of success, you know, and I think people should really take note of that because what makes her happy is serving others. You know, what like your success is like completely different from hers. And I think that's what, you know, you have to define and don't compare yourself to others. And I just wish you the very best. I know you're going to accomplish great things, and I am so happy for you.
Thank you.
And for your family, I know like they're very proud of you. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel.
Yes, subscribe.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
And she has a bachelor's in interdisciplinary studies and a double minor in Chicago Latino studies.